Okay, so today I'll try recording on this new device. It's a little handheld, the kind that you would use almost for college lectures and things like that, so the quality might not be the greatest. But what you have here is almost the ability to do a new format that I sort of react content that I was thinking about doing, but this is an easier way to do it. Rather than sitting down and watching something which I don't really have time to do these days, I could do it like this because I drive like an hour to and from work, so I figured I could watch like an episode of a show each time. So this will just be like an intro where I sort of test the audio quality, and what I'll have to also test it against is the actual audio of whatever it is that I'm watching, because you'll be able to hear that too, right? They're not separated, or it's not like on headphones or something, so I would be listening to that and you would hear it in the background. So I don't know if that would get copyright issue. It probably would, because you'll hear like everything from the whole episode, but I'll either be talking over it or I'll put a timestamp so you know what part it's on. But this is more so just to test the position and the quality, and it might not be the greatest. And it's also one of those psychological inhibition things where like it feels kind of weird. Like it'd be the same as if you were talking on the phone, like on some kind of Bluetooth thing. But it's the same thing that sort of would make people feel weird. Like, oh, you're talking and if somebody sees you, and it just seems weird. The same way that like even talking into a mic seems weird to people, that like you have nothing to compete against and you're like alone in your room in your house and you're kind of just talking about whatever. It doesn't really bother me too much, but there is some sort of inhibition. It does feel weird, like you're talking to yourself basically. And even deeper than that, the whole React content is so like narcissistic, or just living vicariously. You expect like, why would anybody give a shit? But it's something I haven't done a lot of. I've only seen like a handful of TV shows in my whole life. I guess I've seen more animes than TV shows, unless you want to consider them the same category. But I could list them out like very easily. Like I've seen The Mentalist, but I haven't even seen the whole thing. Basically up until Red John is called like season 6, and then I didn't watch like the rest of it there. But effectively, that's about as far as a series I've seen. Like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, I've seen like the whole thing. I think I might miss an episode here and there when I'm saying these, but Seinfeld, I'm pretty positive I've seen every episode. And then How I Met Your Mother, I saw almost every episode, maybe just some involving the mother, like up until basically he meets the mother, I saw. And then, so yeah, that's like only Psych, I saw most of it until they introduced maybe like this major arc villain, like Mr. Yin or something, and then I maybe stopped watching around there. It's just sort of random too how I decided to stop, but it almost feels like when a series starts to get tired, like, you know, The Mentalist milked the shit out of Red John, and then all of a sudden he's gone. And even the ending was very dissatisfying, so that's part of the reason why, or that's like Psych jumping on the bandwagon, where The Mentalist originally copied Psych, but then Psych almost feels like it's copying that, where it's trying to have this large, overarching villain similar to Red John or something like that, where, you know, it just feels maybe contrived. It wasn't the kind of series that Psych needed to be. So yeah, Psych, The Mentalist, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, How I Met Your Mother, Seinfeld, Friends I've probably seen a good chunk of. You know, some of these sitcoms that, you know, your parents would watch or you just have on, you would end up seeing a lot of them. So like that, but what else would be one? Just the original Twilight Zone, I've probably seen almost every episode, if not every. Even these, I'm not confident that I've seen like a single one 100% of the way through, although I have seen Seinfeld, definitely. I think every single episode at least once. But yeah, or it's the sort of thing I would do, like I would just watch them in the background of doing something else, kind of like what I would end up doing here, but no, like I'd be playing a game like WoW or something that would require like a lot of farming and just repetitious, you're kind of playing it in the background, or chess or something, Hearthstone, these kind of games. You're not playing them like with no attention, but you're playing them like at half attention, so it's like the same way that I would like often play MMOs or stuff just as an excuse to listen to music. This is the same thing, like are you listening to music in the background and playing something in the foreground, or are you playing something in the background and listening to music in the foreground, or watching a show in the foreground or background? Like which one is really the focus? And it's sort of like this modern attention overload thing, but it's hard to say like really which. Yeah, you can just play this off even if you think it's weird, like, oh, I'm just totally talking to someone, but you normally wouldn't talk this much. But no, this device is almost used for like college lectures and stuff, so you can record it and then listen to it later. It's that kind of, I don't know exactly what you would call it. So maybe later on I could get something better, but this is just a good way to test it. So I did like one React content, which was the Barbie movie, and I used a timestamp, and it was good, but the way that I'll do it here is like I obviously won't pause it, and so it'll just be a straight shot. And so the biggest obstacle here would be the ability of you to hear it in the background. Because I don't like to show or play any of the actual content for copyright purposes and just out of respect. So you certainly won't be seeing any video of it, but at least I'll show a timestamp and you will likely be hearing the audio. So I'd have to decide, what do I want to see? Maybe one of these Star Wars series that is so, there's like 1 million of them, or just Monk is a good example because of how much I like those kind of detective type series. So it's what Psych and The Mentalist both were sort of based on, a little bit like this eccentric, quirky sort of detective character who's very smart and solves cases and stuff. Of course, you could say Psych copied Monk, but then The Mentalist copied Psych more directly, the whole psychic detective element. I don't know what Monk has to do with that particular element, but just the same sort of, template where it's he's a little eccentric and things of that nature. I don't know, I doubt that Monk would involve anything to do with actually being a psychic, but he's just like a very good, skilled, I don't know what it is, actually, I've never seen it, but it's very well regarded. And one thing I heard about it the other day, actually, in some other context, some video of like the Seinfeld curse or something, and it was talking about some other show that Michael Richards has done, the guy who plays Kramer, obviously, and it said that he was offered the role of Monk, and of course Monk was a very successful show, and so that would have been much better, but he ended up he declined the role, so imagine that, he was in such a powerful position, and so part of that curse is your own fault, you were offered what turned into one of the most successful shows ever, or whatever, one that has such an amazing following to it, even all these years you hear positive things about it, but instead you turn it down and then you end up in some similar kind of detective comedy template thing, and it ends up not working. So that would have been amazing to see him in that role. I don't know who actually plays it, but obviously they must have done a good job, and so we would have to decide which one I want to do, and then we'll just try it sort of in this template, and we will see how all this works. I don't know how I would go about editing it either. This is all kind of like off the fly. It has like a USB functionality, but it'll probably be a pain to figure out everything. So yeah, we'll just do this sort of as an extended intro. But this is the whole beauty of it. It's like ASMR driving in your car and reacting to something, or just talking about random stuff. It seems kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not the sort of thing I would normally do, but I feel like I may as well give it a shot. And it would give me a chance to watch stuff because I, let's say, wouldn't have a chance to watch it any other time. And what else? Just like I'd be, watching on my phone. Like I normally just listen to music, or I watch like kind of random videos, and I guess I could do that too. Listening to music is kind of pointless, but in this context, but I could like react to random videos, just different subjects or news or sports stuff or whatever. Like I watched a little bit of that yesterday. The whole Caitlin Clark thing versus Angel Reese, just because I don't really follow that at all, but just because she, showed her up in a way that got a lot of media coverage, like, oh, Angel is making fun of Caitlin when she had beaten her before, so now she gets her revenge, so that was kind of a cool thing to see either way. Will she talk shit again if she wins, Angel, or will, Caitlin get her revenge and things like that, so that was kind of fun. I don't really follow sports, but those kind of storylines can be interesting, and the media is just hyping the shit out of Caitlin. It's one of those psychology tidbit moment here, where I have always such a major interest in psychology. The thing is that it's like what happens like with LeBron, this is happening now. When you over-cover and hype up every single thing somebody does, then people start to hate them for that reason alone. So it doesn't mean that you really hate them, it's just like people are going to start to hate Caitlin, or they already do, just because, wow, we hear about her every fucking day, and enough is enough. The same thing happened like with Taylor Swift, with the Super Bowl and whatever, the build-up. It's not that you hate her, it's just that you hate that they're, like, what does it have to do with it? You can say she's there, show it once, and then you're done, but they overdo it and talk about her on and on and on, so I don't think it's fair to simply say, oh, people are just hating on her. Nobody cares what she's doing, right? She's a musician, let her do her music, nobody cares. But when you shove something in somebody's face that much, so even the same thing with LeBron and, like, the Lakers, right? It's not about whether you hate them or not, it's like, they're not even a good team. They don't deserve the kind of attention they're getting. Other teams don't get nearly as much, even much better ones, like Orlando, for example, this year is doing much better than the Lakers, but they don't get talked about ever. The Lakers might miss the playoffs, but they're always talked about on and on and on. LeBron is talked about on and on and on, even though he's not the best player anymore. Obviously, he's older in his career. So it's still impressive, but you have to temper that a little bit. Don't overdo it, because then you draw people the other way. And I always think of Trump almost in that analogy. Like, people it's almost the opposite. You hear so much negative stuff about Trump that now people start to like him, right? People do the opposite of what you hear all the time. So you hear so many positive things, oh, LeBron this, Lakers this, and then you start to dislike them just for that reason alone. So what you really dislike is the media coverage, not the actual, the state of what they are. If they're just doing their thing, minding their business, nobody cares. Okay, they're struggling, trying to make a playoff spot. So this is kind of a weird thing to do, but again, it's sort of like, what do you have to lose, right? Like it's sort of an energy thing. I don't know if I really want to do it, but it's more like, you're driving anyway, I may as well like watch something anyway. I haven't really done that in a while. Like, what was the last thing I watched? I had gotten like HBO Max to try to watch something, but then I never actually did, or that was also part of my intent to react to stuff, some sort of Star Wars series or something of the sort. And then on the flip side, I had watched one thing while driving at one point a while ago, was like the first episode of Arrested Development, and it was actually really good. It's one of the best like pilot episodes ever. And of course, my background, I should have said this maybe earlier, is that I've never been much into TV shows. Like I said, I could name like 5 shows that I've watched in full, right? Psych, The Mentalist, Seinfeld, How I Met Your Mother, that's basically it. But then I've seen maybe more animes than that, but still very few, like Death Note, Darker Than Black. These at least I have seen in full, Code Geass, Full Metal Alchemist, both the 2003 and Brotherhood, and then a couple more, Cowboy Bebop, Neon Genesis Evangelion, DBZ, DBGT. So the point is that I've seen very few of both shows and animes, but of the ones that I have seen, either I've been lucky that they've all been pretty much good, or Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is almost embarrassing, the first show of that, the original. Well, not like the original as in season 0, but whatever, the 4 kids with actual Yu-Gi and Kaiba and all that. The point is that even though, even though I've seen so few, I generally have had pretty good luck with them. They're all pretty much good, and even to the point where I've not only gotten invested in them, but some of them I've seen multiple times, or at least certain parts of them I've seen countless times, and I get really invested in them. So I don't always watch shows, but then when I do, I'll typically try to watch the whole thing, or I'll get really invested, and I've debated some of them all the time and talked about them over the years, like Death Note, especially The Mentalist, how I criticized the ending and how unsatisfying it was, or at least how Red John is beaten and things like that. And so the point is, my real history is with reviewing movies. I've seen thousands of movies, and I used to review them professionally, and then I have my own blog where I would review them. It was kind of in the vein of that, like where I have more of a film interest than actual anything to do with shows, but this might work better. It'd be hard to watch a movie because I'd have to watch it in like halves, unless it's like really short. But I don't like doing it that way either. Like, I'd like to watch it straight, which I somehow managed to do with the Barbie movie, but then it was such a time commit. Although I was pretty good about not pausing it there, but I almost like the idea of pausing it. But I won't do that here either. I'll end up getting in a crash trying to do it, but also just for the sake of the smoothness of it, it'll just be like I put the timestamp somewhere in there, but I could almost just say like, okay, here's where I start watching it, and then you can just watch along, and that's it. Like, there's no need to, like I'll do an intro and then I'll just do the watch along. So here's where it starts, 0, or whatever, like 10 minutes in after I'm done with my intro, because that's how long my intro could be, 10 minutes plus, whatever. But then at 10 minutes I start watching, and then whatever, the episode length it will correspond to the rest of the video, and then I'll have my closing thoughts. But the point being that since you won't pause it, you could just watch it straight, and you wouldn't even need a timestamp necessarily. It's like, I don't know how to put that retroactively either. Like, I'll put a timestamp in there, but then what would happen? Like, since I'm not using it now, I would have to manually sit there and watch it go for that amount of time, or I don't even know. But yeah, this is all kind of new to me, but it is interesting to do. And the one principle that I always have, kind of with streaming, that I always would be against doing face cam, which of course I wouldn't do here in any capacity either, but I would also feel like, I could react to videos and other things too, like I was saying, or I could react to music, I guess, and give reviews, kind of like the way that one guy does. There's one channel where he always just listens to music, like Music Teacher Reacts, something like that, and he'll just make faces to the music and whatever. But No, like the same way I wouldn't believe in doing face cam in any other context, I wouldn't believe in actually showing the content that you're doing. So the closest we'll come to that is, which I won't really be able to prevent, is like I said, you'll hear the sounds of the car, of the windshield wiper, of the engine, of the whatever I'm watching in the background. That won't be, you won't be able to really help that part. So yeah, I think I could give any of these things a try. I could continue watching Arrested Development, or I could rewatch the first episode. So I'll just give sort of a running commentary as I'm watching and talk over it maybe, and then give like a final thoughts. But my style is almost more suited to, like, some scene happens that triggers me or interests me, and then I pause it and give a theory or talk about it or whatever, like how, especially in these detective shows, you can have the same thing happen where, you know, it's a case where you come up with a theory. Oh, I think this guy's the killer in this episode, and lay out my theory. I can still do that kind of thing, but it'll be like I'm basically talking over the whole episode the whole time, which is kind of weird a little bit because whatever, but that should be fine. That's because of my apprehension about actually pausing it. But I'll have to listen back and see what the quality of this really is. So this I will use as like an intro somehow. Maybe I'll upload it separately as just an intro, or I should do it as the intro to the first series of whatever I'm going to watch, but that'll be the next time I drive. So this is a good way to take advantage of a time, right, in which I'm not doing anything anyway. So like, what do I lose by trying to do it? And maybe there's a cynicality with it, but I don't look at it like that. Like, oh, you know, you can't even drive in peace anymore without trying to turn it into some form of content. But it's not really, it's more just me like giving this sort of thing a try. And like, again, watching stuff that I would want to watch anyway, or fitting something in that I don't have time for. So if this is the only time where I really feel like I can do that, right, where I'm driving an average of 2 hours a day, or it's sometimes like every other day even. Or no, it's more like, well, whatever. It's like 2 hours here and there between a day or two that I end up having to drive. So that ends up being a big deal because, whatever, you know, that is a lot. So you may as well just fill it in with doing something. And then if you may as well watch something, then you may as well record something. And then if you may as well record it, you may as well upload it and turn it into a whole different thing. So, yeah, or again, you could turn it into some sort of other thing, like a radio, like, oh, I don't listen to the radio while driving, I am the radio, and I'll just turn it into like a just chatting sort of thing that people do in other contexts, like just IRL stream type stuff. But the problem with that is, and you could actually stream, like rather than just even record this, my phone and all isn't that great to be able to do it, but you could just like actually just stream from your car or from your phone. And you see that with like, whatever, there's certain streamers who I've seen do that, like Foosly or Soda Poppin' or whoever, and they're just driving in their car, they're going shopping and things like this, and they have some, like, that's taking it maybe a little step too far, because again, that whole IRL thing, like, I don't want to show, you know, I don't believe in doing face cam, things like that. It's not even a privacy issue. I could care less about that. It's just more like, what's the purpose of it? Like, what does it show? What does it prove to show your face or something like that? I don't never, like, that personal interest I always criticize and think that's taking it a step too far. Even this is like, okay, I'm a movie critic, you know, former professional movie reviewer who now is going to be reviewing, even in sporadic fashion or in elongated fashion, I'm going to be reviewing TV shows, and there could be some insights, and at least that's what it's holding it accountable to be about. Even if it's not that insightful and it's not that good, I would still say, like, okay, you know, that's what it's trying to be, or you're holding it accountable to be that. And so your personal appearance and idiosyncrasies and whatever, all those in real life things that people would focus on are not the focus. And so whether what you're doing is insightful and good or not, at least that's what you're trying to make it about, and you're not distracting with other in real life things. So I'll start kind of right here with whatever I decide to look at next time. Okay, so today I'm going to actually do a reaction after that very long, exhaustive intro, so I'm going to keep trying different settings with this thing every time. I actually have this pretty nice professional, you know, studio mic, even though it's like a tiny dinky one. It's like Power DeWise or something, but it didn't work because somehow you go to input it into here and it just didn't, it recognizes it, but it didn't work, so whatever, we'll just use this for now. I'm going to watch something on HBO Max, just for the fuck of it, and I won't pause it, and I'll just watch like a random pilot. And so normally, even though I'm the type to want to watch something all the way through, if I'm going to watch one, I'll, you know, kind of nest and like want to commit to it, and it's kind of representative of how when I have seen stuff, I'll usually watch it even multiple times, or I'll, debate it and analyze it and really get into it other than just simply watching it. So I'm not the type to want to leave stuff hanging, even though I did list off the series that I supposedly saw and then I didn't actually see all of them all the way, like even The Mentalist. But see, I've seen certain parts of it multiple times, seasons 1 through 3 especially, but I just didn't finish it all the way at the ending, but maybe with a good reason, because it was so bad. So I could just pick something almost at random here, of course, as we are indeed driving, but whatever. We'll watch a pilot, and maybe I'll use that to determine whether I watch something for real or not, but then that'll turn into a whole nother thing. I'll end up watching like a series worth of episodes that are all just, just to try it out like that. Like Arrested Development was a good one. Let me just see even what's on here. Not that I'm encouraging that you should do this while driving, but it doesn't really matter because I don't have to like interact with it too much. Like I'll just pick something and just go with it. So we'll just watch like a short, I would prefer like a 24-minute format sort of episode rather than like a 40-plus minute episode, right? You get those two kinds where it's basically an hour episode versus a half-hour episode, or at least a time slot. So we could also do movies and stuff in this context, and of course, like I said, you will hear them, and there's no way for me to stop that. That's part of the reason why I was trying to use that mic. You use that kind for like short films or whatever. It's like the kind you put like, you stick to you and it's small and you can't see it, right? I don't know exactly what you call it, but they're very subtle and hard to see, and it's pretty good quality. I did a couple things with it before, but the thing here is that we're going to basically look for, like you'll be able to hear it in the background, and I can't really stop that, so you'll have to deal with that. We see the Barbie movie on here just to, obviously that was the one that we reacted to before. I don't really know. Curb Your Enthusiasm, this is just showing me like the top stuff. I mean, I'm open to pretty much any genre, although I tend to like maybe more serious stuff more. Like if I prefer to, whatever, just, as an example, like Psych is a really good show, but I still prefer The Mentalist despite the fact that Mentalist copied it so directly, because it does have a little element of taking itself seriously, but then the drawback of that is you have to hold it accountable to that, especially towards the end, where even though it wants to take itself seriously in terms of its tone, it's also a clown show where, whatever, I won't even say spoilers for it, but it's just basically a dumb ending to that whole arc. You milk a villain, this will be a long intro again, but you milk a villain for 6 seasons, and then you want to say at the end, well, he's just a man, he's not that special. This is how people try to justify it. That's a phrase that like people use in YouTube comments a lot, like, oh, he's just a man. Well, we knew he was just a man those first 6 seasons, but he was a very impressive man, he was a very capable man, he was a very smart man, like, he was able to get away with all these things, and now all of a sudden it's uncharacteristic. So it's kind of like you want to have it both ways. You want to milk something for 6 seasons long when you could have ended it in season 3 like they had set up to, or, earlier you could have still carried on the series but in some other way, things like that. But no, you want to milk not only the series but also that particular character and storyline, and then when it comes down to, okay, you milked it for 6 seasons, but at least give us a proper ending, they can't come up with one, so now it's just a cop-out both ways. If you wanted to come up with a shitty ending like that, at least do it sooner. Whatever, obligatory rant on that. That is one of those things that really does live rent-free, like in your head, or at least for me. It's so bad that, like, it's unbelievable that people defend it. Some people say that about the ending of Death Note, but, I get it. That one's not as bad, but still, I get it. It's hard to believe that a character that you developed that way, and see, with Red John, at least you don't see him as much, but, like, you even see it from Light's perspective. So you know that Light would have had Mikami test a notebook, or there's so many things that he would have done, right, as precautions. The same guy who put a piece of pencil lead in his... See, this is like my analysis side. This is kind of what we'll do, where we do an intro to what we're watching. Maybe I won't even watch anything, and I'll just use this to... No, I kind of want to, but... It's like, rather than... He put a pencil lead in his door hinge, he put the door handle at a horizontal angle and it won't go any higher kind of thing. That these are things he did just to see if somebody went in his room or not. And that was when he was about to be under surveillance in like episode 7 or 8 or whatever. And it's like, he did all that just to see if you entered his room. even though he's at that point not outwardly suspicious at all. Whereas in the biggest moment, biggest plan ever, where he's having a fake notebook and all this kind of stuff, he wouldn't have any way to see whether somebody went inside Mikumi's safe deposit box. Like, why wouldn't he just tell Mikumi that? Oh, use this little trick I learned where you put a piece of pencil lead in the in the safe deposit box so that it is broken if it's been opened. And maybe they could have noticed that and replaced it, but effectively you could get away with doing that because some similar way, just like, something would have fallen out or something's not in there at exactly the position, put it at a very specific position that they couldn't replicate, whatever. Like, there's a little layer of dust on it, so if they had taken it and changed it, you would know. So you would have some fail-safe in there just to know. And how do I know that? See, I'm not just pulling that out of my ass and saying, oh, Light should have won, or like you're a Light fan. You're literally using what happens earlier in the series just to see if somebody enters a room at his house when nobody even knows anything, right? It's very early on. You don't know the notebook exists. You don't know anything. You still have a piece of pencil lead in the hinge. You have the fake piece of paper on the bottom to fake out anybody to think, oh, that's a security measure, when really that's just to bait them, when the real test is the hinge and the door handle's position. So he had those 3 layers. This is the same character. He had those 3 layers just to see if somebody went in his room. You don't think you would do something similar to see whether the notebook has been altered or changed if they somehow checked Mikumi's safe deposit box on their own or anything. No fail-safe to know whether that, like, how. You could say he got overconfident, but it's just not consistent with his character. He was overconfident the whole series. Like, people say that with Red John, too. Oh, he was just cocky, but he was always cocky, and it never led to him getting caught. So that's why I don't really buy it. Okay, let me look for something here. Obviously, there'll be no video to accompany this. Like, see, Game of Thrones. I'm not in the mood for it right now, but that's such a celebrated series that you hear so much about. So, like, why wouldn't I want to watch that? And this would be maybe the way that I do. And I wouldn't want to show video from it anyway. I just believe in that. But before we make a point, I don't want to show video, but then I get banned for inadvertently having the audio in there because I won't be able to. There's no way for me to do it. Like, I lower the sensitivity, but it's still going to play it. Like, I don't see how it wouldn't. Or it's going to be somehow louder than me. Blue Beetle, there's all these movies. I don't fucking know what I want to watch, actually. Maybe this one will just be deciding what to watch. But no, I could, like, look at pilot episodes and just use those to decide. Quiet on Set. 90s, iconic 2000 kids show. Oh, is it going to be about that guy that they were... Whatever, the one dude who's, like, accused of creeping on kids. I always hate stories like that because it shows you... So, in other words, there's no oversight as you're going along and trying to do something. Right? Like, you don't... How can I say it? You don't actually do anything right at the time, or whatever's said at the time is not taken seriously. Then all of a sudden it comes out, or somebody says something, and now everybody jumps on them. I don't like that style because it should be more like the real flaw is as it was happening, something should have been done then, and it shouldn't be like, oh, we'll take it lightly until 20 years later, and then we'll say, oh, wow, now it's a problem. It's not even that it's not true, it's that it loses credibility, and the whole process loses credibility, because it's like, if this Dan Schneider or whatever, right, I think is his name, if he was such a bad guy, then, you know what I mean, why even work with him? Like, oh, these child stars, just, we'll work on a different project, or we won't do it. But see, you want the fame and benefit from working with them, but then you also turn a blind eye to what they're doing wrong. If it's really that bad, then why would you put up with it? Right, like, that's the thing, nobody's forcing you to do any of this. Just go home and just live a normal kid's life then if you want. Now, that's not defending the guy's actions. It's just saying, you know what I mean? You want it both ways. You want to benefit from it, but you also don't want to call him out or hold that accountable. Like, no, I'm not going to work with you because you're weird or you're perverted or whatever. And obviously other people in that situation working with him should be able to do it, because you might think, oh, these people are protected, or they're so powerful or famous or wealthy that they can get away with stuff, but only really as much as you allow them to do it. Again, nobody forces you to work with somebody. You might say, oh, well, you shouldn't have to give up your career to do it, but it's one or the other. Like, you can threaten, okay, I'll quit if this isn't addressed. And sure, you might get fired and lose your job, and then you don't want to be known as somebody who's complaining about that, but if it's actually legitimately happening, then why should that bother you? Like, you're not just making it up, you're saying it because it's true, so it deserves to be addressed. I don't know. So let's see, I don't know, like, this is good because I haven't seen any shows and I haven't seen at least even any recent movies in the last several years. And so, like, any show that you could imagine, I probably haven't seen it. It would be easier just to name the ones I have seen, like, than the ones I haven't, because I haven't seen anything. The Walking Dead I could maybe see. I don't know if this is even on here. I'm just kind of naming stuff off. Yeah, I can't really even decide. I was going to think, like, Monk, because that's kind of similar to Mentalist and Psych, but which I just really like those two shows. Sitcoms I'll maybe try to avoid, but maybe there's some of them that would be worth looking at. Like, I've already seen much of Friends, so I don't know if that would be much much value here. And of course, the irony is I'll be watching it kind of the same way as what it would come across here, because I'm just going to have a timestamp up there, and so you won't be seeing the video. But since I'm driving and my eyes are on the road, for the most part, I'll glance over here and there probably at the screen, but like, for the most part, I'll be listening to it more than watching it as well. So it'll be an audio experience for both of us. We may as well just listen to like an audio book or something. So many of these are just movies on here, though. I can't find, like, I can't find actual shows as much, or nothing really jumped out. But yeah, like, the majority, there's so many good ones that I'm sure I haven't seen that are worth seeing, and even if I want to say, like, oh, detective-style things are my favorite genre, it's not a case where that really matters, because I wouldn't know too much about other genres, because I haven't seen too many things in them, so I'm trying, like, I put the recorder in sort of a different position here, and it might be a little better. I changed some of the settings, but ultimately I wanted to use that other mic, and it's just not working. Because that might be easier if I, like, put it close to my mouth. I'll, like, there's, like, this little thing that sticks to you, right? Or you, like, clamp it on, and so you clamp it on, like, your shirt, so it'll be close to your mouth, and then if you do that, then obviously it won't be, it obviously won't be fucking picking up the other sound as much, but it probably still will. Because it's, you know, it's in your car. Like, you can't really evade that. And I'm not going to wear, like, headphones while doing this. That would be weird. Or maybe, I don't know, it looks weird enough just you talking this much for whatever cringe purpose it might seem. But also, obviously, for the purposes of doing the headphones as well. Like, I have a limit on how much clown level I can look. Okay, so what we need to do now is decide on at least what to watch. I probably won't even have time to watch it now in this trip, but this is kind of a, you know, whatever. It's like a guilty pleasure sort of format. I don't care even if people would watch this or like it, because I'm really just doing it just as an excuse to watch shows anyway. But I figure if I'm going to do it, I may as well give some sort of running commentary or something. I don't know. So this seems to have a bias more so towards movies. Yeah, see, like South Park or The Simpsons and all these kind of things, which some of those have gone on for insane amounts of time. I guess I didn't realize, like 20 plus seasons or something crazy like that. HBO Originals, The Truth About Alex Jones. I could fact check that. Or The Truth versus Alex Jones. Oh God. Lionheart. I don't know what any of this stuff is, dude. I'm never really a big fan of those kind of talk shows, even though that's what this could be in my own right. Like, I'm doing my own just because I will never be able to decide what to watch. Willy Wonka, something is at a high point here. So, what can I do? The Revenant is a movie, though. This is maybe a bad idea. I should have probably decided what to watch first, but it's okay. I'm known, if for nothing else, for doing long intros. Transformers. Man, I really can't figure out what to even do. Try to think, like, what were some of the last movies that I saw. I could do Curb Your Enthusiasm, I guess. I'll just see the first episode and see what it's about, but it'll be basically a poor man's version of Seinfeld, maybe, to the extent that you have, obviously Larry David's influence and this and that. One thing I don't like about that whole discussion of Seinfeld is people sometimes try to discredit Jerry and say, oh, well, Larry did this and that. Like, he was obviously a big part of it, but Larry left the show, I think, right around, like, season 6 or something, and then they had still some of their highest rated seasons ever, so clearly, you know what I mean, like, Jerry was able to hold it down without Larry there. He was gone for, like, the last couple of seasons, and that's not, like, why even the show ended. They were still very highly regarded. Some of the best episodes come there, some of the last seasons. So I don't think you can discredit that at all. Like, it's called Seinfeld for a reason, and I've always criticized his acting. I think he does a bad job acting. Like, there are 3 really good performances. Michael Richards is amazing. Julia Dreyfus is great. Obviously, Jason Alexander is very, very good. Who didn't win a Emmy, I think, or yeah, you know what's shameful is actually Jerry won an Emmy for acting. It's one thing if he wins it for like the overall show, but he absolutely did not deserve it for acting. I'm not even hating. It's just like he even admitted himself, like I'm not an actor. He was apprehensive, I think, early on when they offered him the show as far as starring in it himself. But no, he's sort of playing himself, but even then he somehow does it badly. Like, he's just sort of laid back, and they sort of poke fun at that. Like, oh, you don't really get mad. Your voice just raises to a comedic pitch. But that could be part of them picking on his acting ability, that he can't really, I don't know. He has a few good moments. I'm sure people would be defensive, but I think, like, I'm giving him total credit for the show and its success, but not so much for his performance. He's actually the weakest link of the 4. Anybody would say that, right? Like, Jason Alexander, Julia Dreyfus, and Michael Richards are all like very, very good actors, or at least in those roles they were, right? Michael Richards especially. But then all of a sudden you go on to, some sort of whatever. He's just not that good there, in my opinion. So let's see here. Or yeah, we'll get a most viewed clip ever where I'll get in a car crash and yelling and screaming, and it'll seem like, oh wow, that's just good acting, you're just role playing. I don't fucking know. This is kind of dumb, but I should have chosen a series before I started this. Or I could finish some of the... I could do that maybe. I could finish some of these series that I'm talking about, like Psych. I watched for like the first 5 seasons or something, and then I stopped watching, so... And I do like the show a lot. I just maybe got tired of it, or... I wouldn't say I got tired of it, though. If it was... There's a reason why I watched the whole 5 seasons. Something about it must have triggered me, and I think it was exactly that moment. They're on, like, the boardwalk, and Jules is, like, being held captive by Mr. Yin or something. And it's like, it felt sort of like this isn't what the show was about. They're trying to introduce this overarching villain. It just felt sort of forced. Like, oh, let's make our own Red John type of thing, which is ironic because obviously the Mennoists copied them, but then it's like it came full circle that way. So Game of Thrones would be a consideration. I'm not against watching that at all. I just think I would rather... I think I would rather basically do the... What do you call it? I would rather wait. I don't feel like doing it obviously right now, and that might be like an hour episode. Even if it is an hour episode thing, it would just make it difficult to do like an hour outro thing to it as much, or intro, outro, because I would barely have enough time then to just do it, period, while driving. But if these trips last around an hour, but it can be a little more, a little less. But no, for a half-hour format, this would be perfect, because you could do a nice intro even like this, and I could watch an episode, then I could do a little outro. Everything would be fine with that. So this would be hard if I need GPS, though. Like, I kind of know the route, but if I did, then I'd be screwed, because then I guess I could do it without, because you don't want the audio overlapping. You have enough sound competing with sound here. So yeah, we'll turn this into just like almost a random thing, but I almost want to see. So Curb Your Enthusiasm is number 2. Let's just look over like the top 10 on here. On Quiet on Set. Now that's probably because it's new, and it probably has to do with that thing I was just talking about, Dan Schneider. They don't make it clear from this. I'll critique the images for some of these. It doesn't actually show you very clearly that that's what it's about. I'm just assuming that's what it's about. Curb Your Enthusiasm, obviously it's been out for a long time, so that's just generally something that's probably popular on here. Something with John, it's like a fucking talk show. The Regime, I think, is the 4th one. I can barely even read it on there. Obviously watching on my shitty phone. So yeah, I mean, I could use any of these services like Paramount Plus or this or that, Disney Plus for the Star Wars ones. But basically this, I'm just doing HBO Max just because I was using it before for something, or I guess I was effectively using it for the Barbie thing, such that you'd be able to, you would be able to basically, I don't know, it just, it has seemingly a good collection, but there's so many of these streaming services it becomes impossible, right? You'll subscribe to one just because you want to see this one show, and then you'll unsubscribe when you're done, or you know what I mean? You rotate like that, so it becomes. I'm not saying it should be a monopoly where one has all of them, and a lot of them are original shows specific to networks, but like I wanted to see the Twilight Zone one time, so I subscribed to Paramount Plus just for that, and I did it just to see like a couple episodes, and then I forgot about it, and I had this thing last month where I did that. Like I went through every single thing. I was subscribed to like 20 different things that I was just wasting money on every month because I had forgotten or I'm too lazy to unsubscribe to them. That's why auto renewal is such a cancerous thing, because you shouldn't really. That should never be an automatic thing that you have to go back in and cancel it. And sometimes they make it very difficult to do, or you forget about it, and then so much money comes from that for them that somebody just forgot to unsub, so we get a free month out of them and stuff like this. That should be a standard. Like if I ran any sort of service like that, I would always not have an auto renewal thing. You subscribe 1 month only, and then you have to go out of your way and you have to actually make a point to do it again if you want from scratch. You shouldn't have to. That's why there's certain good spending habits to discourage. Like either don't use cards at all, or only use debit cards where like you can't use them as credit basically and go over what you actually have in there, or you can just like don't save your information into anything, so even if you have to manually enter it every single time, the full number and stuff, that way it's not too convenient, so you have to think twice about it, and you might resist the urge to do it. I'm usually pretty disciplined about stuff like that anyway. Like I just don't really use it at all for anything, just a few things I have to pay with my card, but just don't even have cards in the first place, and that can be good for you too. So yeah, I guess I won't watch anything here just because I couldn't decide, but let's just look at the rest of these top 10. Something single, The Single Life. I don't mind even like sort of romance, drama, those kind, but the problem is they overlap too much into comedy. I even would say I dislike comedy in a way, because it's almost like an excuse for quality at times, but that's why a series like Psych stands out so much to me. I'm the type of person who would be predisposed to dislike that, just in the premise, like, oh, I wish it would take it more seriously, but it still does such a good job in every area. Like the mysteries are pretty good, the deductions, everything, the way it kind of highlights what he's looking at, they take great care in that area as well as the comedy. So even if I don't like that element sometimes, I can't see what this is, the Something Fix, Ninja, Kamui, something like this, and then Happily Something, Mean Girl, and I don't know, Tokyo something. I really should have had a better plan, but I was hoping something would just pop out at me, and it's just not. And I won't put any limit on it either. Like it could be a cartoon, it could be anything. But no, the problem that I have with React content is that there's this copyright issue. Like I don't like the idea of doing that, and I also don't like, like showing video, even the audio. I'm not doing on purpose, really, I swear. But also just the fact that that's kind of part of the draw, I guess. Like, not that people are seeing it in exception of, oh, they're watching here for free instead of, someone's reaction instead of actually seeing it. Although some people might still do that, and it's good enough for them. But usually it's people living vicariously who have seen it and enjoyed it. It's always a form of content that I basically just mocked and thought is dumb. Like, why would you even care about that? But Ghost Adventures, or I like those kind of series too. Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or Twilight Zone, like the anthology series, basically, where like the episodes aren't connected. They're just like one-off. There was one like that I watched. Like I've done a lot of these where I have watched like one episode while driving, not where I was doing this sort of commentary for it. I just did it, period. Like there was some series like that I can't remember the name of. It was some horror anthology series, and I just saw like the first episode, and it involved like these old women and somebody like pretending to be their kid, and then it ends with them like killing him. It's actually not a bad first episode either. Goosebumps was kind of like that. The only thing I remember of Goosebumps ever, besides just the theme song, which is pretty good, is that one episode, which very much is the first episode, where it's like Carly Beth or whatever with the mask, and she wears the mask and becomes like a dick because it like sort of changes her and stuff. So that was a pretty good premise, at least visually and everything compelling. And there's some movies like that too. There's this Indian movie actually that I saw where like there's these people sitting around the campfire and they keep telling scary stories, and so whenever they tell a story, it goes into like some sort of flashback or imaginary scene about that have nothing to do with each other, right? And it's like some guy freezes himself in the mirror. He gets this power that allows him to freeze other people or something, and then he's celebrating, and then he accidentally says freeze and looks in the mirror, and then he freezes himself. And so whatever, that one's not even too scary, but and then at the end, like, that must be a copy of some American movie that I don't even know, Hollywood. That's why it's called Bollywood, because they copy the shit out of everything. But My 600-Pound Life is another one here, and really, that's all you have to do to make a show, huh? Just get to 600 pounds and just talk about your life. That's literally it. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, this is at least a good excuse to try to do it, but I can't decide actually what to do. The Big Bang Theory, I've never seen too much of it. See, that kind of thing I don't think I would want to watch. As far as like I wouldn't mind, an episode here or there, but I couldn't see myself getting invested in it. How I Met Your Mother is one rare exception to that, sort of, that it did have a good balance. Like, it's written in a very, very high level that I've said before. Like, I don't know, some of the themes throughout the episode, it's more than just, random slapstick comedy or whatever, which I'm sure the Big Bang Theory could be like that too, but I don't know. It's sort of like that Chuck Lorre template thing where, like, it's moms or whatever, or 2.5 Men and things like that. Like, I don't dislike them, but they're very just on the nose, kind of like what they're going for, or it's just like more about character design. It doesn't kind of go anywhere else with it usually. It's like 2.5 Men. It's like Charlie's a player and Alan's a little nerdy, awkward guy, and that's it. That's the whole show, right? You have all these different good characters, but there's nothing more to it than that. Like, he's upset about paying alimony, and Judith's a bitch, and Berta's Berta, and Charlie's gonna be hooking up with another girl again, and it's like, we get the point, and it can be funny at times, but that's what a lot of the humor sort of writes itself, because the characterization and the acting is strong. So now all you have to do is fill in the little placeholders, like, oh, you know what Charlie's reaction to this crazy event is going to be, and you know what Alan's is going to be, and they're usually very opposite. And I'm not diminishing it. I just think it's a little bit like template, right? He has like a formula, and then he just kind of goes with it. I think all three of those at least are produced by Chuck Lorre. All the drama. Okay, you got Game of Thrones, you got House of the Dragon, which I'm pretty sure is associated with that. Euphoria, I don't know what that is. It looks like some kind of maybe adult industry type thing, or I really can't tell. Vampire Diaries, don't really want that. Yeah, how about something that takes place in a real setting that's like actually, oh yeah, True Detective, this could be fun. With my whole interest in, I've seen that ad for like a million times, Jodie Foster and stuff, still going strong. I don't know how old she is now, but it's, I don't know, it's definitely very interesting that she's still even doing it, acting all together. Not saying she's like in a bad state, but just, you would think at some point, I don't know why some of these people don't just retire. Like, what more do you have to prove? But you just enjoy doing what you're doing. She started so young, too. Like, she's in Taxi Driver as a kid. She was in something else, like Svengali, where she's the little girl getting hypnotized or something. So, The Last of... That actually wouldn't be bad, but I'd be afraid of watching The Last of Us for the simple fact of it might spoil Part 2, the game, because I've only played Part 1, and you might think that's stupid, but unironically, that sort of thing can happen, even if it's not about the events of Part 2, although it might incorporate them. I don't know the timetable of when what came out, but it might actually do that, because, originally they said they were going to make a movie of it, but then instead they decided to make a show. Right, it won 100%. There was a movie in production, and then they just flipped the script and said, because I think it was even the same actors that they eventually chose here that were on that. Like, I remember looking at that on IMDb many, many years back, like before the show was even announced, and it was like, oh, they're going to make that, and then all of a sudden, oh no, they're going to make a show. So what, they forgot about the movie? So I really am struggling to see anything catch my attention. The Gilded Age, I don't know what that is. I'll look through a couple more of these. Let's see. I guess at least this part I could show, for the simple fact that you're not really showing anything wrong because you're not showing copyright content. You're just The Sopranos. Yeah, that could be a good one. And that's sort of like supposedly a comedy too. Like it's partly comedy but largely serious. I don't even know. But sort of somewhere in between. So that's one. Succession I've heard pretty good things about. Then Billions is the one where that guy's wife is a dominatrix. Paul Giamatti. I think I saw maybe a couple episodes of that. But like I saw a little bit of Person of Interest. And then it maybe wore out a little bit, but that's obviously written by Jonathan Nolan. So that was a very cool thing for him because he helped Nolan on a lot of his screenplays and he wrote the short story that Memento was based on. So it's definitely a good, he deserves recognition. Not as much as Chris, but he's clearly got talent himself. Gossip Girl. Or what's that one show with Allison Williams? Just Girls, I think it's called. What a clever creative name. I'd almost want to watch that just because of her, because I've always memed on her perfectly symmetrical face and how she just has like this certain, just a face that really stands out, like very photogenic. And you notice that especially in Get Out. Like the reason why they chose her to be Rose in Get Out, spoilers I guess, is because she looks so genuine and trustworthy that, you know what I mean, like she's just like practically glowing. And you could say it's a makeup thing, but there is just something naturally about her face that just stands out to me. Pretty Little Liars, Band of Brothers. There's no like Chernobyl. There's no chronological element here. True Blood, Girls in the Bus, On the Bus, Deadwood, The Outsider. Like there's too many of these things. Like how would you ever decide? This is where I always say I'm very fortunate with the ones that I have watched. Whatever series I have watched, I generally have liked, right? And maybe you say that's why you watch them, but I wouldn't have known that. And then that's what I mean. Like usually when I watch something, I'll watch it all the way through. I won't just watch part of it and get bored. I'll enjoy it and then I'll watch it, the whole thing, or at least most of it. The Wire, I remember seeing that as like one of IMDb's top-rated things or something on some lists. So it's clearly a very high-regarded one. I don't know exactly even what it's about. Just a guy sitting in a car. It could be police procedural type thing or something similar to that. I like the idea of a show, too, that's about, like, one thing. Not like a recurring, like, oh, you're solving a different crime every time. It's like, what if the show is just about, like, one crime, right? So, like, you take whatever, like Kira from Death Note, right? And it's the whole show is about that. It's not like a police procedural thing where every episode, there's a different zany villain to go after, right? So even like the Red John case was a big part of The Mentalist, but you're also solving these other cases. What if it was like, okay, we're going after this one crazy villain who's really smart and hard to catch, and that's the whole show. It's just that. And sure, you would deal with his subordinates and you would deal with other things going on along the way, but it would be all fixated on that. You're not working for the police like on other cases and getting distracted by that. You really fixate just on that, so it becomes, that would be hard to do, I guess, but to keep that interesting and to have fresh material for it. But in other words, you wouldn't drag the series out either. It might just only be one season long, but you get to the point, and like not even just that, like Chasing a Criminal, but like a series that's about just like one thing, one event. Like, there's something going on. We're robbers and we're trying to rob a bank, and the first episode's you making the plan, and the second episode's you getting guys together, and by episode 10 you rob the bank, and then it's over and the series ends. Like, you're going from point A to point Z instead of turning it into some sort of humdrum routine where it's just another day with another formula of what we're trying to do. Which is sometimes the worst way that some of these series go. It starts off with an interesting premise, like, this one time you're doing this crazy thing, or even movie series work like that too. You get one last chance to right the wrong and do this thing, and then you do it, and then, happy ending. But no, now we want another season. So for some reason, you'll keep doing it, right? It's like, you have to work for, it's a criminal who has to work for the government to try to earn his freedom if he helps them catch this one killer, right? Let's say as a premise. But then he helps them catch them, but then he just keeps helping them anyway, or something. So it's some extreme circumstance that seems interesting, but then they just drag it out, where now it no longer makes sense because, it was never intended, even by the writers and producers, to go on that long. Right, so now West Wing, One Tree Hill, Rome. Yeah, at what point do you not have the ability to name that? Like, there's never been a show named Rome before, or you can just have multiple and there's no copyright issue here, like, or there's just no desire to be different. They stole one of my names too, like the Eternals Marvel. One of my stories was called Eternal, short story / whatever, more than that even. Dark Material. Oh, there's girls actually, unironically. So we could, I could watch at least, I'm not going to do it now actually, but we could actually watch that. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, like, what is it going to be about? It's just girls doing their thing, and there must be some more depth to it. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing I would necessarily like, but if it's a good story, good characters, so I'd be watching it just on account of Allison Williams, for whatever reason. Which she is a good actress, but she hasn't had, like, the greatest roles or career, honestly. Everything's been downhill since that Peter Pan fucking... For some reason she played Peter Pan in something, I don't know why. Big Little Lies. There's so many of these that have lies in the name, like Pretty Little Liars or something else to do with it. Yeah, I even mentioned girls, and you see it there. That could be an interesting choice. Something that you're not going to be embarrassed if somebody in the rearview mirror is watching you watch it, but I'm not even hardly watching myself. Boardwalk Empire. But yeah, there's so many tropes to do with, like, the sequelitis element where you feel kind of like you get yourself in a position where, you know, How I Met Your Mother, the ending might have made more sense earlier on, but they never expected even themselves for the series to go on that long, but it was making so much money or it was so successful, right, that it just ends up being that way. The Cleaning Lady, Turtles all the way down, or you know what, Dexter is a series that people always said I would like. Dexter, Monk, some of these, Rizzoli and Isles, I have no idea. I've seen that reference places, but I don't know. Or yeah, like Suits was a series I was watching for a couple episodes, and it's like I liked the characters and I liked the show to some extent, but it's the premise couldn't be any more boring. It's like, oh, there's these, you know, professional people just doing their job, and it's like, okay, you know, office environments, and I don't know, like, I was rooting for it, but the premise is just so inherently difficult to do that, like, how do you keep that interesting for a long period of time? And the answer is you almost just can't. Right, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's too much like, okay, Harvey Specter or whatever, and this kid who is pretty smart and good at math and stuff. So that character dynamic is fun, like this upstart kid who's very gifted, and Harvey who's very experienced but a little bit aloof and this and that. So that dynamic was very, very fun. Mike. And I played that one game where he reminded me of it so much. Like Late Shift, that guy reminded me of Mike. He's like, seems like an ordinary guy, but he's super gifted in certain ways, or he's like super smart when he needs to be. I don't know why that just was the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that, or when I played that. So yeah, like that was interesting, but again, the premise is where you go to die with it because it's just not an interesting premise, and no matter how good it is within that, like, who sits down and says, yeah, I want to make a show about just guys in suits and just doing this mundane legal stuff, and it can be fun, but you're making it kind of harder for yourself compared to, oh, let's make this show about something crazy like a criminal subject matter where you see it from their perspective, or something, you know, really above and beyond. Yeah, that's the one thing I would almost want to do, is like make a series where you show a villain that's up that level, right? This is such a recurring criticism that people have. Make like a Kira, Light Yagami, or make like a Red John, the Mentalist, and all these kind of great villains, but actually have them go out in a right way, like where it feels completely justified. And it's really hard to do because it's almost unrealistic. You're coming up with this crazy expectation that, like, oh, they're so above and beyond and so smart and so perfect that how could they possibly ever lose, that when they do, it doesn't really feel very convincing. So you can't have it both ways, but to actually deliver on that, or maybe the solution would be he should just win. It ends with, like, Death Note almost seemed to be steered that way, because you think Light beat L when you didn't think that was necessarily going to happen, and that surprised a lot of people. So why shouldn't the series end like that? People say, oh, well, of course he's going to lose. Well, why? Why couldn't he just kill Near Mello? You know, he killed Mello, he kills Near, he kills the task force, and he just wins, and he laughs off into the sunset, and the episode is called New World 37. Like, it almost could have been. He actually just wins, and it's over, and then you get to see, you know, just a montage at the end. Right, it felt sort of forced the way that he lost, or just even the fact. Why not go in with the balls? And, like, you're not saying that you're on his side or that he's a good guy, but it's an ambiguous ending where it's like, he's just that capable, he's just that smart that nobody can beat him. And so he just always wins. That's it. He beats Al, he beats Near, he beats Mello, he beats everybody, so fuck it. And just, the whole season 2 in that sense was sort of forced too. So maybe I'll watch Girls, actually, fuck it. I don't know why, or I'll pick random ones of this, but nothing really jumped out at me. I'd have to go in like alphabetical order and just look through them. But I won't even have time now, so maybe tomorrow or whenever I drive again, I would be able to basically do it, but I don't know how long the battery lasts in this thing either. Just this little dinky recorder, and this audio quality isn't going to be the greatest, but part of that's because I'm driving, but also part of it is because I was trying to use like another external mic with it potentially, but it wouldn't let me. And so I don't know what to make of that, but we'll just deal with it for now. This is like very much throwaway sort of content, but I feel like it's a good thing. Like, if I'm going to do it anyway, like, or I'm watching something anyway, I may as well give my reaction to it. Or like I said, I can even just react to videos. We'll watch some random, then let me actually do that just to test it then. So we'll watch Girls episode 1, just because I feel like it. But I'll watch some random thing on YouTube and give sort of some brief reaction to it now, just to practice it, how that would be like. But also the fact that you can test how the audio sounds in the background. So whatever it is, let me just see what it's going to be. Just anything that's on my YouTube suggested, recommended, which I'm not really seeing. Or we could even just, I don't know. We're not getting anything really good. We could like do a song and just compare it against that. So this will be kind of how it would sound. Like keep it even low a little bit, because I don't really want it to be heard there, but this is like some song. Let's see if you can even guess what it is. Dead Weight by Jack Stauber, instrumental edition. So we'll see how that kind of... So yeah, we could create our own little radio station where I talk over it instead of just playing the music. That's always the stupid thing about radio. It's like the people talking in between is just to put their stamp on it and to make money from it, to say, oh, we own this radio station, or look at us, we deserve credit for it. But you don't want to hear their stupid ass voices, you want to hear the songs. And so it's just them just playing songs and just talking in between them and taking credit almost for it in a way, right? Radio is such a dumb thing in that way for the most part, but in the same way, like I'm doing it right here, but I'm combining both. I'm letting you listen to music and you know, obviously they don't make the music. Radio stations don't own the music. They just somehow get rights to it or whatever, but for temporary use and things like that. But yeah, we'll compare it against the music here to see how much that'll fuck up the thing. And I don't know exactly. You would think it might have a bias towards avoiding it, like it'll pick up voices more than it picks up music or something else, but other sounds. But it will pick up voices like in the show that you're watching, like if you're whatever you're reacting to. So I don't know. I'll look at. Yeah, that was sort of a random, fortuitous one though. Girls, of all the shows in fucking existence, doesn't mean I'll watch like the whole thing either, but just like, but that's also what I hate to say is maybe shorter series are even the better if it's only like one season. Because if I'm gonna watch one episode, I may as well watch the whole thing, but I'll be sort of hard on it a little bit to the extent that if the first episode isn't good, like that's really what I could use as a test, like some sort of challenge. Watching Girls until I get bored, right? The way that people post these videos, like watching the WNBA until I am impressed, or watching the NBA until I'm impressed, or whatever, right? And so watching blank until blank, and it's usually pretty short because to imply that it would happen very quickly. And so yeah, I could do the same thing. I'm watching Girls till I get bored, and maybe I'll actually enjoy it. So I'm not going to go easy on it. And so it's the same thing. Even shows that I love, like The Mentalist, I stopped at season 6. right, episode 8, because that was such a disappointing ending, and honestly, what's going to happen after that? Like, Lisbon and Jane get married or something, but that's about it. And then Psych, I stopped when that Mr. Yin appeared, and then, so these are series that you watch for many, many seasons, and then you all of a sudden stop. How I Met Your Mother, I stopped, like, almost right before they met the mother, or, like, where they show you the mother, and then they have a whole season, I guess, with her, so it's somewhere, like, almost before that. So something must happen at those points. It's not just, I'm getting bored of it, because I'm also so invested in it, and I've watched so much, so you would think I'd want to finish it. But it ends up being a case where you're basically able to look at it in such a way that it's pretty fucking windy, actually. You're able to look at it. Oh yeah, that'll give me a voice test, actually, the fact that it's like an ad for something. But what you have here is the capability that you would think you'd want to keep watching it because you're so invested. But the fact that I don't means that something must go wrong with the writing at that point. And of course, the whole point is to evoke sort of the movie reviewer self in me, that I would want to review these shows the same way. A little bit harder to do it as you're just watching it, but sort of give your reactions. And I kind of like that element, right? Like, it'll be a fun sort of go-along thing. You kind of guess who the killer is, come up with theories the way that I would in, like, Detective Game, Phoenix Wright, anything like this. You're trying to come up with theories and everything like that. So that's the whole beauty of it, that you get to, have your little theories, and I maybe suited more if you pause it, but like I'll predict in this one episode that, this guy did it, and then I was right, and so that feels satisfying. Or you're like doing a game within a game, right? Depending on the genre of the show, you could kind of have different elements like that. I don't know what you can do with like a comedy as much, but it's especially fun with detective stuff, I guess. Like, predict who the killer is in every episode of The Mentalist if you're watching it for the first time, or in some other whatever show that I haven't seen. But the whole beauty of that is you get to, sort of play along with them, and actually Psych is pretty good about that, the way it zooms in on like the clues, so you can try to figure out what it is that he's gleaning from them. But again, that would be more suited to you pausing it all the time. You'd have to sit there and think about it for a second, like, what do I think he got from those things? What do I think his theory is? You got some other Jack Stauber song here, so I'll kind of listen to the audio and test it back. I'm just kind of disappointed the mic didn't work with this, because it has a slot for it and it even recognizes it, but it just didn't work, and I don't know why. Right, so maybe this quality won't be quite as good as that would have been, or I'm sure it wouldn't be. If I had like a more advanced phone or something, you can almost just do it from there directly, or you can almost stream it, but then I don't know how that would work with,
Did you know
you might have to show it off, actually.
95 live channels without cable? I'll stop being...
See, I'm getting an ad for fucking Hulu now. I should have done that instead of HBO Max, and I did it without even knowing what, just because I had done it before, so I just like resubscribed or whatever. But it's a case where, I just was doing it like on a whim. I didn't even know what I wanted to watch with it necessarily. That's often how these services will work. You'll want to watch like one show and one show only, and you'll have to subscribe to a service to see it, because there's maybe no other way to do it. They have exclusive rights over it at that time, and then these things get shuffled around so much, and then at some point you might just never be able to watch it again. That's why discs are so important, that if they still have DVD sets and stuff, you might never... Oh shit, this is actually a vocal song too. So like you have discs, that's what I always say with games, like, they'll get delisted and they'll be taken off some online store, and then you'll never be able to play it again because there's no physical copy, because they just stopped making physical copies for a lot of games these days. So you should always demand as the consumer that element, almost at least, but... okay, that's good enough. So we get to... I have at least decided, though. I will watch Girls Season 1, Episode 1. And like I said, I'll basically do it as a challenge. I'll watch till I get bored.